that attempts to extradite the Gupta brothers from the UAE has been unsuccessful. And this was denied recently by a court in the UAE. The Justice Minister, Lamola, saying he's quite shocked and, of course, dismayed by the decision. They are going to be appealing that judgment, however. I'm joined now by Paul Hoffman from Accountability Now. Paul, you, of course, so invested in watching state capture and the bringing people to book. Talk to me about what today's news means for the fight to bring those responsible for state capture to book.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity, Sally, and good afternoon to your viewers. I think it's a major setback for the fight against grand corruption in South Africa. I think serious corruption is really beyond the capacity of the National Directorate of Public Prosecutions. Our prosecution service is not up to the task, and I'm afraid even the diplomatic corps seems to have dropped the ball on this occasion. It's not going to get any better while the policy is to sit with the existing structures and to expect them to perform better than they have performed since the demise of the Scorpions following the 2007 resolution of the ANC when Jacob Zuma came to power. The problem at the moment is that there is dysfunction in the criminal justice administration. There are saboteurs who are planted there. The right people are not prepared to work for the NPA because of the toxic atmosphere that exists in the NPA. And until there is radical reform of the criminal justice administration, we're going to have more disappointments of this nature. You saw, I'm sure, I think many of your viewers would have seen the falling around that went on during the press conference this morning. To approach an extradition application as a tick box exercise and to claim that all the boxes have been ticked is really the wrong way to go about it. The Constitution requires of the prosecution service, and indeed of all civil servants, that they do their work diligently and without delay. The whole extradition process got off on the wrong foot because a decision was made only to include a fraud charge against the Guptas in the initial application for extradition from the UAE. When it dawned on the prosecution service that that would be the only charge on which they would be able to prosecute the Guptas, because you cannot be charged after an extradition with charges that were not included in the extradition application. They then sought to amend the application, and they muddied the waters to such an extent that it appears that the Gupta's representatives were able to so confound and confuse the court hearing the matter in the absence of any representation by South Africa in the UAE. And as a consequence, 7 weeks ago, the Guptas were successful in their opposition to the extradition application, and they were allowed to go free. There was no fallback position. There was no instruction to the UAE that if for any reason the application does not succeed, please note an appeal immediately and apply for the Guptas to be held in custody until the appeal is finished. So the announcement that there's going to be an appeal is academically very interesting, but I imagine that the UAE courts will say, what's the point? The Guptas are gone. They're apparently in Switzerland, and we don't have any jurisdiction to extradite them because they are not here. It's a complete mess, and I'm afraid the Ministry of Justice, the Department of Justice, and the prosecuting authority must all be put on the carpet at the Justice Portfolio Committee of the National Assembly to answer the questions as to why they've acted with such lack of accountability in this case.
So They say they ticked all the boxes. They also say that it was a technicality. And you've explained it so well, and I've finally got an insight into what might have gone wrong, because the briefing didn't deliver real understanding of what this technicality problem was. You're suggesting that it's actually because of the original charge sheet, essentially, saying it was only fraud. I seem to recall this at the time. They then sort of went back and tried to add on. And that, you're saying, is the technical issue that allowed the Gupta lawyers to say, you've got nothing here.
Yes, well, it's muddied the waters. It may well be possible to add later. But then if you know that you have a difficulty of this nature because you started on the wrong foot with only one charge when there should be many counts included in the extradition application, then you at least make arrangements to be present when the matter is argued, and you give instructions to the UAE prosecutors, who are doing it on behalf of South Africa anyway, to appeal immediately and to see to it that the release that has followed the failure of the extradition application does not take place. The UAE is now completely off the hook in relation to an extradition application because they have no bodies to extradite. It is an absolute disaster.
But didn't the South African authorities say they weren't informed when this court hearing was going to happen?
They should have asked to be informed of the date, and they should have asked to be allowed to be present so that they could deal with the kind of reversal that has occurred in this matter. They don't appear to have done so, and more fool them.
Yeah. Talk to me about this Interpol red notice. What also emerged from the briefing is that this Interpol red notice has since lapsed because, if they have indeed left the UAE and are living at large in Switzerland, a red notice might be another way to capture them, but apparently that's lapsed now.
Yes, look, the idea of an Interpol red notice is really an instruction to the police of the world who are involved with Interpol to look out for the persons on the red notice list. So obviously when somebody is arrested pursuant to a red notice, which is what happened in June last year with the Guptas, they come off the list so that a lot of effort and time and money and expertise is not spent looking for them when they're safely in jail in the UAE. So correctly so, and it took them a while to get to this point in the press conference this morning. The red notices under which the Guptas were arrested initially in Dubai have indeed lapsed, and it is possible for South Africa to now ask for red notices to be issued again. But having been bitten once, the Guptas will be twice shy, and they will make it their business to remain in countries in which there is no extradition agreement with South Africa, or countries where the tentacles of Interpol do not stretch.
So this is really disheartening. I mean, you've explained that the options are now actually diminished in many ways. What does this mean here at home, where we have a massive state capture report that puts some very concerning allegations on paper, that's done a lot of groundwork to show potentially just how involved the Guptas were? What happens here at home? What happens to the Estina Dairy case? Does this all mean that a lot of them are going to fall apart?
The South African courts do not have jurisdiction over individuals who are not within the area of their jurisdiction, but there are many people who were involved in state capture who are still in South Africa, which is why the New Lane case is on the go, and the Estina case is also pending. So the fact that two individuals in a state capture inquiry, which has named more than 1,400 individuals, have escaped extradition, does not mean that the whole business of bringing those involved to state capture to account ends overnight. The difficulty is that there is no political will to reform the criminal justice administration in such a way as to enable it to deal with serious corruption by preventing it, by combating it, by investigating it properly, which requires great skill, and by prosecuting it at a standard that matches the grizzled old silks that the corrupt bring to court to throw sand in the gearbox of the prosecution case. We do not have the talent to do that.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying now there's no political will. You're also saying that there's just not the capacity. We need a dedicated unit. My understanding is that the investigative directorate is that dedicated unit. You're saying you need something even more niche to look at corruption. There do seem to be some moves on the part of government to establish exactly that. Do you believe that it's all talk?
Yes, I'm afraid that the moves being made by government amount to nothing more than reinstating the Scorpions, which were closed down as a result of an ANC resolution back in December 2007. The Scorpions were technically up to the work involved. They were able to charge successfully people like Tony Yengeni, Jackie Salebi, Shabir Sheikh, the financial advisor of Jacob Zuma, and others. Now, that capacity has been destroyed. The personnel in the Scorpions have been scattered to the four winds, and there is no appetite on the part of those who do know how to do this specialized sort of work to involve themselves with the National Prosecuting Authority, or even with the Hawks, to whom the investigative work has been given. What is actually needed, Sally, is not a revamp of the investigating directorate. I'm afraid that is a horse that does not run. Revamping the investigative directorate to make it into a modern-day version of the Scorpions leaves it just as vulnerable as the Scorpions were to being summarily closed down by a simple majority in Parliament. What is actually needed is a new anti-corruption body to deal with serious corruption, not with cold drink for cops and that sort of thing, but for the big corruption cases, on the basis that it is an independent Chapter 9 institution that has secure tenure of office, because the Constitution gives all Chapter 9 institutions secure tenure of office. That way, we will be able to attract the right people back into the criminal justice administration, and you will not have the sort of falling around that we saw on our television screens this morning when the minister, his DG, and the National Director of Public Prosecutions tried to explain what has really been a major reversal for the proper administration of justice in South Africa.
Thank you so much for your time, Paul Hoffman from Accountability.